Before we get going properly, just to let you know that this episode is episode 1 of a two-parter. Part 2 will be out next Friday. Hello and welcome to the Built Environment Marketing Show. And I am your host, Iowa Bass from Bass Marketing. I'm a marketeer, a content creator and trainer for built environment firms. The podcast has had a bit of a summer break and it's so nice to be back in the interview seat, I guess. I've got some lovely interviews lined up for you over the next few months, so make sure you stay tuned and that you've clicked the follow button wherever you listen. Today's guest is from a firm whose marketing I've really admired from afar for many years. They're an engineering firm called Hoare Lea, and if you've not checked out their marketing, I really, really advise you to do so because it's quite honestly brilliant. I've been a huge fan for a long time, so it was really lovely to connect with Rachel Davies from there, who's their marketing director. What's most impressive to me is they actually do most of their marketing in-house. And to me, it really does stand out from the crowd in terms of, I guess, how crisp it is, how sharp it is, and how it represents who they are. This conversation touches on a lot of things, but mainly around kind of content and their approach to thought leadership and, how they kind of, I guess, program what they do and how actually good content takes time to make, which I love as a kind of overall message and takeaway. So anyway, I'll stop talking now. And I'll let you get on with listening. Enjoy the conversation with Rachel. Bye. Hi, Rachel. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. Can you introduce yourself and your role at Hoare Lea?
Yeah, hi. It's lovely to be here. I'm Rachel Davies and I'm the Director of Marketing at Hoare Lea.
And what do you do in that role? What kind of aspects do you cover? How big's your team?
Team is, I think, about 15. We've had a couple of new recruits. I've lost count recently, but that's great. We cover all sorts of things, all the things that you'd expect: internal comms, external comms, look after social, look after the web. We have our own in-house graphic design and motion graphic designers. And we're also really lucky because we have a small team of 3 that create 3D visualizations. And so that's a little added extra into the mix that we have. So, yeah.
And is that 3D visualizations for the marketing or also for what the business uses?
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, a bit of both. I mean, generally, they help support in winning work. So when we're trying to conceptualize a scheme for a client, often it helps if it's in a 3D realm so they can see what it is that they're going to be getting. So there's a large chunk of their time that's there, but also in marketing, and they can do all sorts of funky things that are way above my pay grade, but no, it's great. Really nice extras to have.
I was going to say, so how can you tell me a bit about Hoare Lea as well? Because it's one of those practice names that I've always known of, but I don't know much about.
Yeah,
and I know I've always liked your stuff, but it's one of those.
Yeah, well, I'm relatively new, I suppose. I've only been here for 6 years, and Hoare Lea is 160 years old. So
I saw that. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's got a pretty good heritage. In fact, the founder, Henry Lee, was quite the man. So he, I think, did the first sort of air-conditioned cooling at the Royal Belfast Hospital. I think he pioneered street lighting. And he was the person who coined the term consulting engineer. So he was quite the dude, was Henry. And later,
what's going on there with him?
Yeah. And so he started the firm, which has been a partnership for many, many years. And we are predominantly have been traditionally MEP based, but we have a huge number of specialisms now, including sustainability, lighting, acoustics, security, AV, lots and lots and lots.
So kind of specialisms under the engineering banner.
Absolutely. And they're there to, I mean, if you're designing a building and if you took away the civil and infrastructure pieces and the structure of the building, Hoare Lea does all the other bits concerning the environment of the building, if you like. So the firm has a great legacy. We're mainly UK based, and we've got just over 1,000 people now, about 1,200.
That's a good sized team for 1,200. Lots of people don't have that.
You mean my marketing team?
Yeah. It almost sounds like it's actually in the realms of where it should be.
Yeah, and I think when I joined 6 years ago, there was more like 3 or 4.
That's what.
Yeah, and I've been very lucky because the firm have supported the growth of the team, and I think that's mainly due to the success of the rebrand work. It's completely transformed the firm from where it was to where we are today, and so they've seen the value that the team can bring them. We're a very busy team. I'd love more people, but then I'm probably delving into the megalomaniac stage there, so probably need to rein it in.
400, that's my team.
Yeah.
So your rebrand, when did you do that? How did that come about? Because that was that, no, I get it, that was a big shift for the firm in terms of how they operated.
Yeah, huge. I joined 6 years ago. They brought me in really to do the rebrand for them. So they were already working with Bristol agency called Mr. B and Friends. A lot of the exploratory work had been done already when I joined. And then we put into practice sort of the implementation of that about a year after I joined. So the firm's rebrand has been going for five years.
Wow.
Which seems like a long time, but also a really short time.
But it's evolved, isn't it? So you've got the crux of it now. It's just a case of it evolves and develops as you grow and flex, really, isn't it? It's kind of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and responding to what's going on in the world around us, so all the changes in net zero, for example, and responding to that, climate change, skills gap is massive for engineering consultancies. So we're constantly evolving, but it's built on great foundations, which I think is critical in any brand. Otherwise, it sort of loses its way if it's not real. So it's been fantastic.
And what's kind of been your overall approach to marketing overall in that 6 years? What's your take? What's your approach? Is it on kind of yearly plans or grander ambitions or themes, or I don't know, loads of different ways, isn't there?
I think me personally, I'm quite a dreamer. I quite like big aspirational things to aim for. I like the fact that we are small, but we punch well above our weight. So we are competing with the big boys like Arup and WSP and others. I think the approach is very much content led and thought leadership led, and at the heart of it really is how we connect the brilliant things that our people can do here, their expertise, their knowledge, and the different specialisms that they offer to the world at large. So whoever those people are, I'm sort of loath to say clients, because there's lots of people who aren't necessarily the client that we are also trying to connect with and understand what we do. So
there's so many different communities, isn't there? There's so many different communities that you do actually have to connect with. And I think one of the things I like the fact that you bring a fresh approach to what we're doing that connects with different people, because it's not always the same kind of technical kind of content. It's much more story led, and it's much more open in a way, from what I can see.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's what we try and do, because at the end of the day, we are talking to other human beings. And when you're 160 years old, I guess you can make some assumptions that we technically know how to engineer. We're quite good at that. And I think the other thing that's been really interesting is just the voice of the engineer is just as relevant as any other party in the construction of a building or of a community or of a city. And I think the engineer's voice has been quiet for too long. And I think given the challenges that the world faces, now's the time really for an engineer or engineers in the whole, not just at Hoare Lea, across the globe, across every company, for them to step up and stake their relevance claim.
How comfortable are your engineers in doing that? Because that is quite a big change for engineers. No, it is across the. I know
you're
lots
right.
of engineers, right?
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
Right. it is challenging. I guess that's part of the fun. I think as well, it's always best when you can demonstrate that it works, so that people don't feel like, oh gosh, am I being set up here to do something silly or make a fool of myself in some way? So I think we've had some great success stories that give confidence to others. Is everyone ready to do it? No. Does everyone need to be ready to do it? Maybe not. So I think we've got some great champions who are really good at going out there and talking in a I'm going to say more simplistic way. I don't mean in a dumbing down sense, but just can connect what we do day to day with our clients in a easier language, as it were. So no, it is challenging and remains challenging. But I think if we don't rise to the challenge, we're going to be in trouble. Especially now with the emergence of AI, a lot of the, what do you want to call it, sort of like the grunt work of engineering will be done by machines and computers, so the skill of the consultant will be the thing that, really will help.
And it's their ideas, their ideas and their solutions, isn't it? And that's what it's going to be. And that's that thing of that expertise and using that, because it's like those bog standard calculations are going to just be run on the computer. So it's just kind of like, actually, it's that and how to solve these huge challenges that the world is facing. So no, it's so interesting. But it's like, how do you make engineering? Because I think the other thing is, if you try and simplify engineering, sometimes people are like, you're dumbing us down, and you're like, actually, no, I'm just making it accessible to more people. And I think it's that fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a place, isn't there? There's a place to be technical and to be deep into that.
It's like the Ice Truck Tea Journal. Yes, you can do that there.
Go for it. But maybe the website's not the place to do that. Maybe when we're trying to explain something to someone who's not an engineer, maybe that's not the place for that. So I think it's about bridging the two worlds as best as you can, and showing them that you can still make real impact without the technical jargon. So that's what we try. We try and do. I'm sure we're successful sometimes and fail in others, but it's all part of the fun.
In terms of like content and thought leadership, how do you approach it? What's your kind of approach and viewpoint, and how do you do it? Because you do some lovely stuff.
Thank you.
And it wasn't just me saying that. I had virtual coffees with people, and I had one on Friday with a head of marketing from an architectural firm. And I said I was interviewing you, and he went, "Oh, I love this stuff."
Well, good, brilliant.
He literally did. He was like, "I was looking at their new website. It's so good."
Oh well, I'm really pleased about that. I'll do this podcast again. Go and have some more coffees.
She'll be like, "I'm going to pay my bosses now."
With the thought leadership stuff, I mean, we lead our marketing really with thought leadership, and we do that for a couple of reasons. The first one is actually the importance of thought leadership internally, because you have to bring together the experts who are talking about a subject matter, and you have to get some consensus around that. You have to get them to focus. What are we going to go out and talk about? What are the challenges in this sector or whatever the scenario is? And so you're already bringing that different way of thinking internally in amongst your engineers and specialists, because we're not all just engineers here, but so you're bringing the technical expertise together to discuss a bigger problem. So that's really valuable in itself.
And do you do that as a separate kind of standalone? You come together and you do that, or what's your?
So we bring a team together. It has to be a fairly small team, because otherwise it descends into chaos. And things take 500 times longer than they actually need to take. So you have a fairly small core team. You discuss what's going on, and you're challenging as well. So someone might say, "Oh, we need to talk about subject Y," and subject Y is well understood. and it's been covered in lots of places, and there's no value in us talking about subject Y. So we have to be challenging as well, till we get to a point where we think we've got something interesting here that would be good to explore. And then we begin the process of who would we like to go out and talk to about that.
Nice. Yeah.
So the next bit then is our internal expertise, thinking about their clients, influencers, sponsors of us, maybe institutes that we have connection with, and then sort of some more of the left field voices that might have an opinion on the subject matter as a whole. And we go out and start asking them, do you want to participate in this with us? So second bit of that, brilliant, because that's either deepening existing relationships, starting a new one, and so there's the relationship management piece there is also really critical.
Yeah.
And then we go interview, and then we build whatever it is we're building. And my team would look at how are we creatively going to tell this story.
Oh, I love that. So you don't go in with it's going to be a report. It's not or it's going to be a blog. It is more a case of what's the story.
No. One of the things when I joined Hoare Lea, marketing was brochure production. So one of the things I said very quickly when everyone came, I need a brochure on this. No, you don't. You don't need a brochure on this. Trust me. Let's talk about what you're trying to do. So we always start with the, what's the story we want to tell, who needs to be involved in the story before we even get into what is the thing that we be produced. Because the thing could be anything. And the thing shouldn't drive any of the decision making, really. So
that's lovely.
That's where we go. And then we build the thing, and then it's released into the wild. And that's the next. Well, hopefully. And the reason hopefully if they are successful, the reason it's successful is because you've done all of that internal work. Because you've got to land the thing, and you can't land it unless you're invested in it. So all of that internal stuff, once the thing's arrived, you can go off and you can talk to your client about it and say,
I guess it helps with the buy-in as well, right? If they've taken it from those early stages and they understand how it's come through, then it's definitely going to help you in terms of internal buy-in and wanting to share it, right?
Exactly. The easy bit is to create the thing.
Yeah.
The hard bit is to come up with the thing in the first place and then connect the right people to it.
Hi, it's Io here, and as you're a listener to the show, I just wanted to tell you a bit more about how I can help you get your built environment marketing done. If you're looking to set up a company podcast or trying to figure out what content you want to create for an amazing campaign that really engages your audience, or even if you want to get your business more up to speed in terms of how they approach digital marketing and how you get kind of senior level people on board with workshops and training, then do bear me in mind. I'm actually a marketing consultant, content creator and trainer, but I work specifically with built environment firms just like yours. So I know the best practice and approaches, but also most importantly, how to apply them to our sector. You can find out more about my work at abassmarketing.com, or feel free to email me at io, which is AYO, at abassmarketing.com. There's also links in the show notes too. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show. What time frames does that kind of take you to get a piece of thought leadership from?
Yeah, it really depends on the team.
Yeah.
It really depends on the team. Some of them have taken a long time.
Yeah.
And that's probably in part because it was untested in Hoare Lea. So there was nervousness about, hang on, what's Rachel asking me to do here? Why would this work? Why am I going to give up my time to do this? And so a lot of hand-holding and reassurance and trying to give examples of why this would be the approach we should take. So it really does depend. But I would say on average, they're sort of 6, 7, 8 month program. So they're big, they're time intensive. But then anything that's worth doing normally is. So I think that I would rather spend 8 months pulling together a piece of really good thought leadership than spinning out 50 brochures in the same time frame.
That's what any other marketer. There's only like brochure. Oh, do you know what? It's that thing, when someone used to come over to you, because I always think that a brochure was someone's crutch, basically. Like, absolutely. I can't go out without it. No, yes, you can.
It's exactly the phrase I would use. It's a crutch. And it's also the other phrase that I really like, which I have to give credit to a former boss of mine, Rod Kay. It's also what you call spray and pray marketing.
Yeah,
because it's not tailored in any way. It's really about us and not about the client. And
get everything out there. Tell everyone everything. Leave them to
tell everyone everything. They'll be interested. No, they won't.
But so how many of those like thought leadership pieces do you aim to kind of have over the spread of a year? So that's quite it's a long process, isn't it? So do you have we're looking to do 5, or is that too much? No,
we'd look to do 1 major piece of thought leadership in a year. 2, if we had a really energetic internal team who could run at the same pace as us, then we could do 2. So generally what we try and do is have 1 or 2 big pieces, and then we supplement that with what we call an insight series. And that is much smaller web LinkedIn post type pieces that are not traditional thought leadership, but they are giving a commentary, giving a view about something that's going on, making a suggestion, highlighting a challenge. So we supplement it with that.
I was going to say, I was like, how many of those big ones can you do? I was like, that's a lot of work. So how do you kind of approach digital kind of media, and also, I suppose, social media and the channels? Because you're not on things like Instagram and stuff where I couldn't find you. Or is that true? See, I was there going, where are they?
Yeah. I feel like it's a confession time. Yeah. So
sorry.
No, it's fine. Just as a general approach to digital, I don't really view it like that. Digital is a platform. So I would say today, 99% of what we do is going to involve digital in some way or another. But we don't start out with how we're going to use digital. That's not the question we ask ourselves. It's more, here's a story we want to tell. What's the best way to do it? It's going to be through digital, for example. So we come at it that way. And as I say, there's very few projects now that don't have a digital component to them.
Yeah.
Social media, we heavily use LinkedIn as you'd expect, and as you know, this is how we bonded together for a shared post that drove us up the wall. So we use LinkedIn heavily. That's where the vast majority of people who would be procuring, for the most part, would see us. We stopped using Twitter, or X, as it's now known, about a year or so ago.
What when someone bought it by any chance?
No, actually, we'd turned it off way before there because we just were getting no value from it, and it was another thing to do with no return. So we just quietly, without telling anyone, turned it off, and no one noticed. So I think that was the right decision.
I love that.
And then just like stealth bombers. We just turned it off.
It's not a problem. Yep.
And then Instagram, we actually started up using Instagram this year under the title Generation STEAM, and we've done a piece of work here. You'll have to look it up, where we are targeting young girls who are 13 to 18 years old, and trying to encourage them to, or at least be inspired by, a possible career in the built environment. And so we've done a piece of work on there, and we will continue to evolve that because, one, it's a good platform. We like the platform. There's other platforms that we probably wouldn't choose as a firm to go into. It's where our target audience are hanging out online.
It's very visual as well, isn't it? So
really
nice
visual
design is going to help them. Yeah.
And we wanted to separate slightly from Hoare Lea, and we wanted to almost slightly separate from the word engineering as well. I suspect there may be some instant turn-offs to young people when they just hear that word. So we're trying to talk to them in a different way. In fact, we trialed it with some friendly 16-year-olds who are absolutely brutal and cut us down to size and told us it was rubbish. So we started again. They were like, this is boring. And that's got too many words on it, and it only had like 5 words on it. So
they literally like, it's like acronyms as well. It's not even like full words. You're like, what's it mean?
So we reassessed, and no, it's good to get the feedback. We're all a bit bruised, like, wow, they're really honest. So we've been doing that now for a few months, and it needs lots more pushing and lots more content, but we do have a good content stream because we've got the podcast, and we try and get really interesting, not just women, but lots of interesting women. We have our client magazine as well that has some great content. So we are sort of repurposing and sort of making it more appealing to, in particular, young women. So, I mean, just reflecting on the weekend, unfortunately, we didn't win the World Cup, but
it was amazing.
Who'd have thought?
Oh, my gosh.
You'd see the crowds and the numbers and the professionalism and the, just everything around that. Such a positive step forward for women in sport. And actually, we looked at, we took a lot of inspiration from the sports industry, who have been doing a pretty good job in terms of attracting in and grassroots activities into sport. So what could we learn from them?
Thanks so much for listening to the Built Environment Marketing Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes, which will have useful links and resources connected to this episode. You can find that on abasmarketing.com. And of course, if you like the show, please do share it with others on social, as it helps more people to find us. See you soon.